So what was your range for Shedeur Sanders, like, throughout the process? How high did you have him going in a mock, and how low did you have him
Yeah.
going?
I mean, I think if we go back to the end of this season, I probably had him going first or second overall.
Yeah.
This final mock draft, and I wrote this. This isn't just me talking. That I didn't feel good putting him at 21 to Pittsburgh, but I did it. And in the write up, I said this. I can't find a single person who in Pittsburgh who says, "Yeah, that's our guy. We're going to draft him." Everyone else I talked to around the league just thought Pittsburgh would do it. It was one of those, yeah, we don't know where to put him. Just give him to Pittsburgh because they need a quarterback and it's late. But I didn't have a single team tell me that they had a first round grade on him once we got all the way through the process. So my ranking of him was, late first, early second round was where I thought on tape he should come off the board. So that's 21 to I thought his range was probably 21 to 40 ultimately.
Yeah.
And then, we saw what happened.
Yeah, I think it was with Dan Patrick. I heard you had mentioned that there was a chance that he might not go in the first round, and that was viewed as a pretty strong take. So, like, did everybody overestimate Sanders as a player, or underestimate how much teams may have been unimpressed by his intangibles?
I think both. Honestly, I think going back to that talk about pressure, I think there is pressure when everyone's telling you something is this way, it's hard to ignore that sometimes. So when you have, all the outside noise saying this player is going to be drafted in the top two or three, I think at some point in season, certainly, that was just the expectation was that he would go there. And then you get to the process part of it. And I didn't think they handled the process well. And that's not just hindsight. I
Yeah.
took a lot of heat for saying on NFL Live right before the NFL scouting combine, I said, he's making a mistake. He should be throwing at the combine, and he should have worked out at the East West Shrine game that he accepted an invite to. And the NFL has this new rule that if you accept an invite to an All-Star game, you have to participate. And he didn't. And so I said on TV, I didn't think they were handling the process well, and I thought it would hurt him. And people were not happy with me. I had a lot of messages, I had a lot of responses to the video that ESPN put out saying that. And so I do think was he overrated as a player? Yes. Based on, the talents and the traits that he has, he was not a top two or three player in this draft class. But then you get to the process part of it. And the NFL will humble everyone. How the NFL views you and values you, they will humble every player. And so I think for the Sanders camp, they had this perception of Shedeur as a lock top two or three draft pick, and they approached the process that way. And there was never anyone from the outside who could get through to them and say, wait a second, he's not. He's not guaranteed to be a top two or three draft pick. And the fact that you are approaching this process that way is hurting him. There's this almost folk story about Dion. The New York Giants asked him to take the Wonderlic during his pre-draft process, and he raised his hand and said, "What pick do you have?" And they answered, and he said, "I'll be gone by then," and he got up and left. I don't know if that story's true or not, but it's been around as long as I've been alive, right? And it almost felt like they were handling the process that same way of saying, "Okay, well, we're not gonna give our all to teams drafting late in the first round because we're not gonna be there." And it felt more like they were saying, why should we want you? Why should Shedeur Sanders want the New York Giants or the Cleveland Browns or the Pittsburgh Steelers instead of what every other prospect does is they go into those interviews and say, here's why you should want me. You're selling yourself. It's a job interview. And they really didn't approach it that way. And I think, I don't know that it was personal from the NFL. I think people were just turned off by how they handled the process. And then you have to go through the conversation of how much attention are you willing for a backup quarterback to have in your building? Because once you get past the starter portion of the draft, you're a backup. Once we got there, it becomes the conversation of, okay, do we want all this attention around a quarterback that might be our third guy, and in Cleveland he might be the fourth guy? And so I think once the slide started, it was hard to stop because of that.
Would having an agent have helped?
Yeah, and I say that as someone who doesn't have an agent themselves, right? So I'm not. This isn't me, who has an agent and was like, yeah, Shedeur should have signed with XYZ agency. But yes, because their job is to give you that prospectus, that range, and also to help you navigate the process. One of one of the busiest parts of the draft process for me is that talking to agents about their players' range, what I see, what I hear, so that they can communicate that to them so there aren't surprises. You don't want to tell a player he's going to be drafted in the first round and he's not drafted to the fifth. You're not a very good agent if that's what you've done. But I also think having an outside voice would have helped them. It also would have helped to have a bridge between Shedeur and NFL teams. Having someone advocate for you, having someone who could have picked up the phone Friday morning and said, "Hey, please give us this opportunity. We're not bringing the sideshow. We're not bringing the Twitch streams and all that. Like we're coming here to work." I know for a fact. I know a college head coach was texting general managers Friday morning about a player of his saying, "Would you please consider drafting this player? Because I'm telling you, he's going to be a hard worker. He's going to improve your team." Colorado doesn't even have a head coach who's probably doing that. I would be surprised if I heard that Dion was texting general managers saying, "Please consider drafting my quarterback."
Yeah.
I can attest to the fact that he's going to come in and be a hard worker, and you're going to not regret this decision. I can't imagine that they were doing it that way.